Israel, has been on the precipice of a lot of different things. They would not be doing as well over there as they are right now if not for the support of, the Western Europeans and America and all this stuff. And obviously that's really great. I don't know how God would be able to come back from Israel being conquered. Like, can you imagine if they were like subjugated and carted off to foreign lands?
Weird. Ladies and gentlemen, the hour has arrived. The time is near. At least that's what they would like us to think. Those dispensationalists, end times loving people, y'all are having a heyday. Listen, if you're in the if you're a fan, if you're here, we love you. We love you too. We want to hear all about your theories. Please drop your John Hagee book recommendations in the comments. We won't read them, but other people might, and then we want to hear about it. So anyway, we're here to talk about end times, eschatology, crazy nonsense that's going on in the world. Got Christians everywhere who were born in the 80s, probably not saying it out loud, but when they're laying in bed at night.
As a timestamp, the United States has not engaged in Israel at this point. At the release of this episode, maybe they will, right? But they have not struck at this point. So,
and we're going to get this out of the way
from that context.
Also, nothing stated in this is the opinion of the Department of Defense or any affiliation with the United States Army whatsoever. Okay,
or any other government entity
or any other government agency. It's in the comments, the actual legal jargon. Anyway,
you guys
continue.
see the meme about Marco Rubio being appointed the new supreme leader of Iran?
Jeez.
No.
I need to get up
shutting down government agencies and just appointing Marco Rubio like the interim head of whatever. So
I get it now.
Like
Captain Competency.
Oh, yeah, there was one where he was like also the new pope. Like, so
that was good. Do you know? Did you guys catch the whole? All right, so if you've been living under a rock,
which is funny because my wife was under a rock and she's like, it's 2 days in, and she's like, "What's going on in the world? Let's turn on the news." I was like, "Are you serious right now? Like, you don't Israel is in a war with Iran,
dude?
You don't know?" And then my wife, you guys will get a kick out of this. She is like, what is the Christian news radio thing everyone watches? CBN or CBN. So CBN is like hyper dispensational right now, and it's like, and so my wife will put it on, and she's just like it's the end times and it's happening and this prophecy.
CBN
and that.
coverage by Alex Jones.
And then last night I'm like, hey honey, can we watch our Alone TV show together? And she's like, what? You don't want to know if the world's ending and if Jesus is coming back? It's like, gosh, I love Jesus. I don't want to watch CBN.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with all of this stuff with the end times coming back. There is if you have a dispensationalist eschatology, you are actively.
What do those words mean, Josh?
Yeah, because I have no idea.
Dispensationalism is the idea that the ethnic Israel, geographic Israel, plays a big role in the end times and Armageddon, the last battle, and all this stuff. And then eschatology is just your theological view of the end times of how it will play out. And so dispensationalism believes that ethnic Israel, the nation of Israel, plays a role based on things that were talked about with, in the Old Testament and then also with Paul and things like that. But here's the problem, guys. If we believe that ethnic Israel is the centerpiece of Jesus's return, then we have to look at the world with that lens and say, okay, well, if there's a war happening against Israel and all the nations are going against Israel, this is what Revelation talks about. So therefore, the end times are happening. Jesus is coming back. The problem with that is if we look at Israel, which is non-Christian and has rejected Jesus, and somehow that they are a central piece to eschatology and to the end times, we have to also take Paul's words in Romans 11 that when the fullness of the Gentiles have been reached, then all of Israel will be saved, as believing that there will be this mass conversion of all of the ethnic Israel that are absolutely anti-Jesus.
I was going to say they're
and anti-Christian, and suddenly, in a whim, like in an instant, they'll convert. And that's the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe. So there's a lot more. I mean, that is a very 60,000 foot view of dispensationalism, but it believes that there is something specifically about the nation of Israel. Now, here's the problem with that. If you believe that, you got to be rooting for this, because look, who in their right mind is going to say, I don't want Jesus to return?
Looking at you, Lindsey Graham. Looking at you.
Lindsey Graham. The war hawk.
There's also a bit in there, and so it's not.
Five-Finger Death Punch the other day from the album "War Is the Answer," and I was like, "Oh, Lindsey Graham must love this." album.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
It's true. We'll put that in the.
Yeah.
I don't know if we get copyright rights struck for that, but
Yeah.
I mean, dispensationalism. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a big piece
Sing it.
about the view of Israel, but also with the whole concept of the rapture and when that happens. So it's not entirely fully wrapped up in the Israel piece, but yeah, I mean it is fascinating. I think it's really interesting because just how mainline Protestant Christianity's views on the end times have changed in our lifetime.
I feel like it's generational. I don't think you can even say mainline. I feel like you've got I feel like you've got boomer dispensationalists, and then whatever's going on below the age of 45
well, that's what I'm. Yeah, that's what I
basket.
mean. Because what I'm saying though, but that in our lifetime. So if you grew up, if you're our age and you're, mid to late 30s, you grew up in Tim LaHaye, going to hell houses and Halloween, a whole concept of a pre-tribulation rapture,
Oh yeah.
all of this mentality. I mean, we joke, but we call Liberty University or the house that Revelation built, because for those of you who don't know, the LaHaye family's big donors.
I can
Liberty
see
back in the day.
3 buildings named LaHaye from
and all that money came straight out of the Left Behind book series, which I have actually been wanting to go back and read.
Oh, we should do a
because
series.
That
would be so good.
It would. Book club, you guys into that? You want to read along
I'm
with
down.
us?
Yeah, leave a
I
comment
can
if you
do
want to
it.
see us do book club
Send me
series.
You could do it.
digital
Come on.
version. I'm not buying that.
Yeah,
Comment
I'm
the
going to do
book title
audiobook.
below.
I'll do the audiobook. Unfortunately, I'm still crushing. I'm still slogging my way through Brandon Sanderson's catalog. But
It's not going to end. By the
I
time that
know,
you finish
dude,
the last
it's
book,
so
30
bad.
books,
I'll
You
be
can write
dead.
faster than you can read, man. It's not. That's a
dude, it's not a joke. I got through Mistborn and I was like, I've done it. And then I started
that's
the
amazing.
Stormlight Archives, and I'm I'm on book 2. The first book's 45 hours long. It's insane.
Yes.
Anyway, Tim
horrible.
LaHaye,
Sorry.
Left
Go ahead.
Behind book series. There's a ton of them, right? And I just remember it. I mean, I read them when I was much younger, like a teenager,
same,
early teens. But they were huge. I mean, even non-Christians at that time period. And I mean, the 90s are coming back big. So I don't know. What do you think?
true.
Are we going to see a
who is the,
dispensationalism rebrand, relaunch?
With the Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye and I can't remember, it was Jenkins, was Dallas Jenkins' dad
Yeah, Dallas
who wrote
Jenkins,
The Left Behind.
Was it
Dallas
really?
Jenkins went on to
No
went on to
way.
write
Shut
The
up. That
Chosen.
makes so
Yeah.
much more. That makes so much sense.
Oh
See,
my gosh.
it's all
I did
just
not know that.
sick cycle.
So,
Dallas.
I mean,
Okay,
here's the
but
thing, man. With all of this, go ahead. All right, Tim, you go ahead and start because I have a big
No,
thing that I
I
want to
just-
get into.
Because everybody gets
Uh-oh.
bogged down in the whole dispensationalism or what. Here's the thing: I don't have to even argue any element of dispensationalism to explain why the whole we have a biblical moral obligation to defend Israel is just the dumbest insertion of quasi theological whatever into geopolitics. Because for instance, obviously Israel has been on the precipice of a lot of different things. They would not be doing as well over there as they are right now if not for the support of, the Western Europeans and America and all this stuff. And obviously that's really great because I don't know how, if God does have a future plan for Israel, whether that's, eschatology or however you want to interpret that, I don't know how God would be able to come back from Israel being conquered. Can you imagine if they were subjugated and carted off to foreign lands, and
Weird.
like, their gates
Like,
and walls were laid to
the
rubble.
people of the Lord.
I-
People of the Lord.
How?
Sorry, it's an
How
Isaiah
would
reference.
the Lord God Almighty?
I know.
Come
What would
back
happen?
It would clearly foil his plans. And so
Look,
it's just this arrogance of like,
I
hey,
know.
hey, good thing America is here to
You're welcome.
defend Israel.
That's right.
Like, guys,
No.
I think he can handle it.
Yeah, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay. I think, and that's another thing too. And I want to just get this out of the way too. I'm not anti-supporting Israel. That's not that at all. I don't think that Israel is not important to God, even the nation as it exists now. I think, I mean, it's still God's people. Whether or not you take the view that the church is the new Israel, or if you take the view that no, it's the actual
There are things to
people of
unpack.
Israel, it's still, however you want to, any way you want to cut it, that group of individuals are God's portion, like that He held over for that period of time, and carriers of the covenants for the majority of human history. Yeah, I think God cares. I think it's important. This is kind of one of those things too, where it's like, it's the why that we can debate, whether or not it's important or not. I think it's important. Same reason, but it's one of these silly things that people, it's always amazed me. Like, people get all bent out of shape about, we support Israel at all costs, they do all of this, and why we don't celebrate any of like the Jewish holidays. Like, that's always been a weird thing for me. It's like America, like we do all these other, historical, medieval Christian early church history traditions, but nobody celebrates the culture that is mandated and derived like from God.
What you mean?
It's
Like
kind of an interesting thing.
Like the, what do you call it? The all the little feasts and the seders.
Yeah.
And all
Yeah, I'm
that
not saying
stuff.
that we don't celebrate them like religiously in the same way that the Jews, practicing
Most of-
Jews do.
I won't say most, but a lot of those are really just cultural artifacts of the Jews more than they're like biblically associated thing. Like, there's obviously symbolism that attaches to it, but like a lot, like, you mean, like, look at Hanukkah, right? You get that
Yeah.
from the Maccabees and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's
not older. Yeah, I totally agree. But it is interesting to me. I just find that fascinating, how we have kind of like selective cultural distinction on certain things as Americans. It's like a weird thing in the modern church.
So, one of the things that I think is key to understanding in regard to like this idea that Israel is a key part of the end times and what God's promises towards Israel are, you could take two views. One, that the Jews were disciplined, sent into exile, the remnant returned, and out of the remnant came, the Messiah. Jesus came, died, resurrected, and that, according to Stephen's sermon where he was martyred, basically came to the conclusion that said, look, Israel, the Sanhedrin, look, if you guys don't get on board, like, this is the way. Jesus is the promise. And if you don't accept that, there is no way for you. You are just like the nations that were rejected at Babel. You are no better than anyone else. That's it. Jesus is God. And then they stoned him for it. You could say, all right, and that way Israel's cut off, and therefore ethnic Israel has absolutely no place. Paul reaffirms this, is, not all ethnic Israel is true Israel. The church is the true Israel. Peter refers to the Gentile church and the Jewish church as the priesthood, claiming the same promises that Israel has. So you could say, well, the church has replaced Israel. And there are different versions of that. You can be a replacement theorist, right, that the church has replaced Israel without being anti-Semitic. You could just say, well, the promises are with Jesus, and those who are not with Jesus are not part of God's true people. Fine. That's not saying, well, now we are, the church, are now fulfillment of all of the Old Testament promises to ethnic Israel. So there's ways that you can look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ultimately, it comes down to what God's promises are. If you look at, and I think it really comes down to how we interpret this, and it comes to the Leviticus. So if you look at Leviticus, God's talking a lot about, if you do this, then I will hold on to my promises, and I will do all these things. But then he goes on, if you don't listen to my commandments and do all these commandments, if you spurn my status, the soul abhors the rules, and I'll break my covenants, then I will do this to you. I will visit you with panic and waste and disease and fervor. It's like, I'm going to discipline you, right? And furthermore, in verse 27, but if you, in spite of all this, will not listen to me, but walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you in fury, and I myself will discipline you sevenfold in your sins. Now, here's the question that we have to ask ourselves. If Israel, following the statutes of Judaism, is all that God is requiring of Israel, then maybe God has a plan for Israel and is okay with that. And you can talk covenantal theology and stuff like that of saying, as long as you're following the law, then you're fine.
But that would be wrong.
It seems to be very contrary to what
it seems like
what it talks about in the
I'm
New
just
Testament.
imagining if God had showed up to confront that viewpoint, if there had been some proponents wandering around Israel at some point, arguing for that kind of roughly legalistic viewpoint. I'm
How
trying to
would God
imagine how that
respond?
conversation
How do you
might
think
go.
he would?
Would he say, "You brood of vipers, you've made"?
That sounds a little harsh, Anderson. I don't know if I would go
harsh.
that far.
Harsh but fair.
Right.
What's that, Lord?
That's the thing. You have to make the decisions. Like, can God? And if you look at Romans, in Romans 11, he talks and he says, Paul is very much spurning, and confronting the Jewish or the Gentile Christians for saying, well, we've replaced Israel. And Paul's like, yes, but like, if they turn, won't they fully come back? And then he says, in verse 25 here, he says, lest you be wise in your own sight, I do not want you to be unaware of the mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. As regards, and then quotes the Old Testament, as regards to the gospel, they are enemies for your sake, but regarding election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers.
See?
And then it says, verse 29, for the gifts and the callings of God are irrevocable. So,
take that.
Claim for the dispensationalists would say that because God promised peace to Israel, ethnic Israel, and gave them promises, then therefore he cannot revoke, his plan. But the problem I have with that is he's done that all the time in the Old Testament. If you do this, I'm promising to your forefathers, and puts no condition on it. But then the condition is, if you don't follow my commandments, then I'm going to reject you.
Here it is. One day, this is how I envision it, right? Like, God's up there and he's like, all right, I'm gonna inspire, I'm gonna pour out my spirit. Paul, you're gonna write 2/3 of the New Testament. And Paul's like writing all of this out, and he's using specific words and choices, and God's like, nope, we're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it. It's like, all right, and I can just see the angels like, do you think that's gonna confuse him a little bit with this whole like sovereignty and this whole free will thing? It's like, no, like Paul's got it. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. And I'm just sitting here going like, Paul, if you could have just like stated this a little clearer, because what it sounds like you're saying is that none of those choices mattered. But those choices are said, and God said, and that's where I look at this is like, what's more likely? We have explicit verbiage from God with regard to his interaction with Israel in the Old Testament. And then we have how we're interpreting what Paul is saying in a separate context, right? Not even explicitly talking about that. And then also, here's the other thing too. It's not eternal in nature. So like, I agree with Paul's statement, like, hey, Israel, and however God defines that ultimately, in terms of that portion of it, yeah, they're sealed in a covenant, a previous covenant, and been affected from it. Just like those people, it's just like asking yourself a question, before Jesus, I mean, did everyone who wasn't Israel who died go to hell? Or how does that work? And
then you've got Melchizedek and,
Right. And we read like, hey, how the world was
like
blessed through that covenant with them, right? So like there's this is not as cut and dry and as simple as the flannel graph, picture of
But
salvation.
It's also not something that we, in a terrestrial, temporal realm, concern ourselves with. Those are distinctions that God gets to make.
That's why Paul says the
And
mystery.
instead we're-
Go back to Romans. Do not forget the mystery.
This mystery. Of
Well,
the
and that's the whole middle part of Romans.
joining
It's
the
like,
church.
I'm going to say all of this, and I'm going to say all of this, and
this.
you're going to be like, don't these fight? And it's like,
No, you don't get it.
how?
You just don't get it. The mystery of faith.
Further,
Controversial
I would
take.
just like to state, though, Josh, I felt
sorry, Nick.
uncomfortable with your dramatization of biblical story, just like you have a problem with the Chosen reenacting
That's right.
Biblical stories.
That's right.
You took some.
I said I
religious
imagine.
liberties of the
I
heavenly council.
caveated heavily. I'm not speaking ex
I don't
cathedra.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead,
But
Nick.
it's
Controversial
true.
opinion.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was just going to say, controversial take. Does it make me a bad Christian if I don't give two ishes about end times discussions and
makes
the
you
amount
better.
of brain energy
Only
that is
because you
wasted
said
in this
ish.
right now? I'm like, I
Okay,
have so
I wanna
many
bring it
better
back.
things to
All right.
do and more important things.
I
want to
bring it back. Well, that's a good point, right? So this is my question. If you've stuck around with us this long, here's my curiosity.
If you're still here, leave a comment.
We need a poll,
love
and
you.
we understand that this is a little hectic. And frankly, after seeing the stats on our last video that apparently none of you have watched, makes me sad. I don't know if anyone's even going to see this.
Things matter.
No, it was the AI one, the AI video. That thumbnail was good though. Anyway, my point
so
was, I thought so. Anyway, we digress.
the click-through
I
rate
want to
is.
know. I want to know what your views are. Are you guys?
It's actually low.
How do you fall in the view of end time stuff? Are you guys pre-millennium rapture, like pre-post, amil, pre-trib, whatever?
This
Like,
conversation. I
drop
am
it-
none of them.
drop in the comments. I want to know. Well, maybe we can put a poll. Can you do polls on YouTube videos now? I think,
No,
or in
I
the
think
comments.
we have to have a certain number of viewers and subscribers, audience, to do that cool stuff.
Anyway, well, maybe we'll put a Facebook post or something. So keep an eye out, or an Instagram post with a poll in it. But I want to know about that, because I think that just like we've had a lot of people coming into the faith, I do believe that this current event will drive more people to exploring eschatology. And we might see a resurgence. Really? Yeah, I do. I think so. I think we're going to start to see a resurgence of pop eschatology again. And so, yeah, we'll probably do an actual serious episode on eschatology at some point. This is literally, we're flying by the seat of our pants on this one. So you'll have to forgive us for playing a little fast and loose. But we'll do a more serious one on it as it gets further on. But I'm curious, views on that.
Yeah, I think that the whole system takes, like all of these systems, amillennial, premillennial, post-trib, pre-trib, all that
it's
stuff.
kind of how many angels
has-
can dance on the head of a pin.
Or
Agreed.
as
ultimately,
one
at the
guy
end
on
of the
Twitter
day,
called it, Israel is Wakanda for evangelicals.
That's funny.
That's the
I
thumbnail.
want to have that conversation. That's hilarious.
Hey, Ryan Gosling's the new Black Panther. Anything's possible.
Oh my god, is that true?
Yes.
No way.
Really?
Google it.
That's
Yeah,
no
it's
way.
That's real.
Dude, the more I think about that comment that Israel's the new Wakanda, I'm like, dude, there's some lore we could explore in here. Mossad and like
that's
what
gonna
they're
be the-
capable of and how small the country actually is. And I'm like, oh, this
It's going to be
is
the
such
thumbnail.
good.
It's going to be Ryan Gosling in the Black Panther with the Israeli flag.
And then someone will open it and we'll be talking about eschatology and they'll stay there for 3 seconds and then be like, who are these jokers?
yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these systems, they take portions of truth from Revelation and throughout the Bible, and they'll take portions of truth and build an entire system out of it. And this is the problem with doing systematic theology. When you do that, it doesn't necessarily make it true. You've just systematized it. So the amillennialists and premillennialists and all dispensationalists, they all have good points. The problem is they look at it too narrowly because the information isn't there, and it is a bunch of angels dancing on the pin of a needle. You really
but here's
can't
the
tell.
utility of it. The actual utility of it serves the same purpose as legalism in like fundamentalist Baptist churches, right? And because the purpose of it, the social purpose of those kinds of things is because it's very satisfying and easy to create arbitrary but really easy to clear criteria for what it means to be a good Christian. Like I know people, old people granted, but I know people who basically think if you don't believe in a pre-trib rapture, you're not going to heaven. That's wildly unbiblical.
Yeah.
And these people are pious, right?
They're
devout. And so how much easier is it to set up random criteria that say, oh, well, as it turns out, being a Christian is all about like just not drinking or believing in a pre-trib rapture or whatever. It's not really about systematic theology. It's like, I'm going to make an easy rubric for me to follow that says that's what makes me a good Christian. I get to look down at everybody else for it.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about any of my own character or fruits of the Spirit or salvation because I've ticked off the boxes that I've asserted are the most important thing.
Yeah, I'll make it even simpler than that. It's I don't have to focus on now if I'm focused on the future. It's Christianity oversimplified with a overemphasis on what is to come. And so it's all about me making sure that I'm free and clear for what's to come and not on, because it's easier if I'm focusing on that, I'm not dealing with my problems now. I'm not dealing with the fact that I don't know how to disciple, that I have no spiritual growth in my own life, that I'm not discipling my children and my family, that I'm not actively engaged in the kingdom of God. It's just so much easier to focus on telling people about the coming doom and how they need to be ready for it. Like it's basically, that was very much what I remember about Christianity in the U.S. Yeah, but Tim, what do you got?
Oh, I just want to tell you guys this because it just like got me this week. My 4-year-old asks me, and this is a theological question, and really kids ask the worst theological questions because it's like I'm going to give you the answer, but I'm worried about how you're going to take it.
Yeah.
And so my 4-year-old asks me, Daddy, does God love me more than you? And I'm like,
That's amazing.
well, like, yes, but I don't like saying that.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
That is cool.
I'll tell you what, it is awesome to hear and to see how your kids use what they learn as they grow and develop as Christians. Like, yeah. And it's also fun to see the light bulbs fire. We've been doing the greatest storybook, story Bible ever, like going through that. And they also have they have a memory verse cards that are lined up from like Genesis to Revelations. And so as it connects to the story, it's not like in order of biblical, but like how it connects. So we're in the Genesis portion. And so, but they've got Romans 5:12 in there, right? And that's just as sin entered the world through one man, Adam, and death through sin, that passage, right? And so we were talking about something, and it was just so funny to hear, like, I forget what the question was, but something happened, and it's like, well, aren't all people, or what happened to, oh no, that's what it was. They were talking about, like, where did all the other people come from? Because, the Bible in Genesis, it only talks about, Cain and Abel and Seth, right? And explaining that partially, and she was like, well, how did they die? And then she like jumps in with the verse, and I was just like, oh, okay, like you're contextualizing, you're putting 2 and 2 together, you're connecting the dots. And then of course then she was like, oh, you were proud about that? Well, let me tell you about the other day when I basically Spanish Inquisitioned our neighbor about whether or not they were a Christian in our playboard. And I was like, okay,
That's
Anyway,
amazing.
it was great. So it's fun, you know.
Well, I take my kids through the mistranslation that Augustine had from the Greek, because he only knew Latin, of Romans 5:12, to say that everybody that's born is guilty, rather than everybody that's born has been fallen into a condition. But you know,
are we doing? Are we going to do an original sin episode?
Yeah,
It wouldn't be bad.
No, I actually was thinking. I
no.
actually seriously thinking about doing starting like another podcast of just audio podcast, calling it Bedtime Theology. When just doing questions, like theological questions that my kids have at like bedtime, and they're like, "Dad, can you explain the
Bedtime
Trinity?
theology.
You know, what is
yeah.
God and Jesus get into
it's
an
a
argument?"
delaying tactic.
That's cute.
Oh, totally is. But they know. That's what's amazing, is that it works because somehow they know exactly the right kind of question to ask right before they go to sleep. It's like, you're 4. How do you understand that this is an existential question that's going to buy you at least 15 more minutes of my time? Because I'm not just going to like hand grenade it. Well, I appreciate that you have like good thoughts like that. I think about like we should have like a podcast called like shower theology, you know, like shower thoughts, but just the really dumb stuff. Like
thinking in the shower, and how theology goes into that.
Dude, we
is
should
not
have
like
like
that.
there
a
are definitely-
random
I will say-
thoughts episode.
The shower is definitely a place where a lot of things you get a lot of clarity for sure. Like I don't like it's like, oh,
It used to be for me,
Figure
and then
all
I
of
had
it
3
out.
children, and now my shower's lucky if I get
and
8
now you
minutes.
don't take a shower. I get it.
All right. Well, if you've stuck with us this long, folks, thanks for hanging out. Yeah, we're along for the ride too this week. We just seeing what's going on.
We should do an episode on. Have you guys heard about the? I'm curious if this is generational with Gen X and Boomer, but the statistical rate of evangelical children leaving the faith. It's
At
insane.
what level? At what current generation? The current generation or the other generation?
Well, so the statistics are only able to be pulled off of those that have children that are now of the age to be leaving the faith. So, like, it would probably mean you were a Gen X parent or a Boomer parent.
Like the oldest millennials, maybe.
The
That's
oldest
us.
millennials, maybe. Exennials, really, Gen
That's-
X.
well-
But anyway, it's just curious to me because I'm sensing
That's us.
the shift.
Or me.
It's not that
Or you.
anymore, but we might be. I wonder if we're in a microcosm. I don't know.
No, I would say, look, I think if you look at what the data shows, our generation was that generation. Our generation left in record numbers. So it's the Gen X, the late Gen X, the early millennials, but that's because most of us came up in the out of the Reagan era, moral majority, like
Right.
so it was a response to that. But then what you're seeing now,
Boomers were yeah, go ahead.
the Gen Z, the Gen Z kids are coming to faith in record numbers, and so they're
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's
the
an
millennials are the
interesting
ones
thing.
that left. Yeah, we were the ones who predominantly went the other direction. But it's a response
were
because
Happened
Well, we were
because
the
the
ex-
boomers were basically in large numbers just practicing their faith outwardly as a matter of cultural momentum. I mean,
Right.
Yep.
the idea, I mean, think about how ridiculous of an aberration an Easter and Christmas Christian is. Like, who goes to church,
Yeah.
Right.
Easter and like, that's so weird. It's like, oh, I believe this is true, but I'm just not going to lift a finger to ever actually act out my faith in any
Right.
way besides these, like, big holidays.
And then it
so
kinda-
obviously your kids see that and they see through the superficial performative. It's like, well, it obviously didn't mean that much to you, so why would I even trouble myself?
yeah,
Well, and they didn't raise their children. Gen X was just like, they were like, where's your kids? Like, they would have commercials. What do we say? There was a commercial. It's 10 o'clock.
yeah, it's 10
night.
o'clock. Do you know where your
children?
kids are? That, for the record, those would have been baby boomer parents, not.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are not Gen X.
So the
Gen
baby
X,
boomer, I'm saying Gen X didn't raise their kids, or the baby boomers didn't raise their kids. So
Right.
The Gen X, they were just kind of disappeared.
latchkey-
and so they didn't
latchkey
really
kids.
care about anything. They had kids, and then basically said, "Well, this is how our parents did it. Go to church." And the millennials were like, "Why?" And they're like, "I don't freaking
Yeah.
know. Like, it's a cultural thing. Do it.
And he's
Just do
gone.
it, right?" And so our generation, was
you guys
the
all freeze?
experimental generation where we asked why. And there was no answers. There was no serious apologetics. There really wasn't anything other than do it because the Bible tells me so. And then, we experimented with the internet. Is it safe? Is it not? It's not. Experiment with screen time. Is it safe? Is it not? It's not. And then, all of a sudden now Gen Z comes along and we're like, what the heck is going on? We've seen the test lab that essentially the millennials have kind of gone through. And now we're coming back to the faith. Now we're coming back to kind of structure. So I think that's ultimately why Gen Z is they've gotten the data. They've seen the problems that have happened to our generation due to the lack of caring of Gen X and the boomers. And they're like, whoa, we got to do something different. And I think that is why you have mass conversion in like Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox and all that stuff, which would be interesting to see the next Pew Research poll to see the growth in that. So
I've just noticed such an interesting difference with millennial Christians that didn't fall away that now have children. The discipleship, from my vantage point, is like they're leaning in like crazy.
Just end it here. I think honestly it's a good place to end. So if you like this episode, like and subscribe. Maybe if you we get enough subscribers, we'll do a poll, or maybe we'll do a live show, and
that's
we'll be
like
able to
a
respond
privilege.
to your.
You'll be able to ask what people think in a systematic way. Like,
I know. Gosh.
Oh, boy.
All right. Talk to you guys later, and stick around. We'll do something else soon.
Get off my lawn. You can't gaslight us. We know you want to talk about receipts. I got human history and Western civilization. What do you have? 20 years of dumpster fires, purple hair, people who don't know which bathroom to go into. Get off my lawn.